I think the concept of normalisation is really key to how potentially uberveillance may be adopted en masse. I guess everybody else is doing it, so why shouldn't I? I'll jump on the bandwagon as well. We've seen that, of course, with 2G telephony, and then 3G, and then 4G. We go from one upgrade to the next, without really questioning the planned obsolescence in these devices to clonk out after 2 years. So we're just adopting. What happens when we have reality-style TV shows is that we become immune to monitoring. I'll give you an example. How many of us go into a shopping mall and actually even notice the surveillance cameras on the ceilings anymore? I know young kids do, because they're always looking up at the ceiling. They're a lot shorter than we are as adults, and so they're looking at you, and as they're looking at you, they'll often comment, "Now what's that, mummy?" Or "What's that, daddy?" And so I think children are very acutely aware of these things because they've just come into the world, they've got an inquiring, curious mind, they haven't been normalised as yet, and they're asking about the world around them. I guess when the telegraph was introduced, when terrestrial lines were being introduced for electricity, we started to realise, hey, what are those lines that connect between the poles? These long, large wooden poles. And yet then we became desensitised. We rely on electricity for our basic needs. And then we've seen base stations go up. I do remember uproar in the early 90s to mid-90s when 2G was just coming into the fore. In Australia it was more like 96, 97. And people were asking, what are these base station towers or mobile switching centres doing in our neighbourhood, doing on our church, doing on our shopping mall? And they look, not only do they look ugly, but they also could be damaging in a radiation kind of sense. People were asking these questions, and now we see them popping up everywhere. It doesn't mean there's no resistance, but increasingly they've been normalised into the landscape. And so first we had the telegraph poles and the electricity going from one line to the other, the power lines. Then we had other inventions in the landscape, for example, mobile base stations more in the 90s. And today, what next? Being watched with the surveillance cameras. I know in the UK there are approximately one surveillance camera for every 11 persons. And most of these have no human intervention behind them. Some of them are not even being watched or reviewed. So why have them? Are they really a deterrent when everyone thinks, well, that's part of the furniture, that's part of the landscape, that's part of the building? And so we become desensitized to the overstimulation of these devices which we once were acutely aware of. What happens now with television programs like Big Brother is that we're all used to being recorded. We don't question why someone is taking a photograph of our child or us anymore. We don't question what we're posting up to Instagram, what video we're placing in access to all of these social media outlets. How am I being portrayed? What is the image that I'm portraying of myself? How might that be used against me in the future or for me? I think we're not questioning, we're just doing like robotics. And robots, when we see them in manufacturing plants, they pick up a piece of something, an unfinished good, they move it electronically with their arm to somewhere else and they plonk it down and they continue to manipulate it till they have a finished good. But we just, like a manufacturing process almost, we've become desensitized as individuals. We don't think that these things are abnormal. And so there are quite a few researchers, for example, Eleni Costa and Mark Gasson, talking about something called normality mining.